Welcome to the Weightlifting Scoop. And I think Travis is fixing to talk about some sports psychology things today. Should be interesting.
Yeah, so we got Jared and James here as well.
What's up?
What's going on, guys?
You got James the Builder. You're building a garage, huh?
No, I gave up on that plan. So I'm just building a shed instead. So it turned out I was going to build a garage, but I have a gas line that goes right through where I want to put it. And so I'd have to move the garage back, I don't know, like not that far, like 10 feet. And there's a slope in the land right there.
The land.
And so it would have cost me about another $2,000 to put up bricks and stuff because the slope's just big enough.
Well, nobody's got time for that.
Yep. So it went over the budget. So put that one on hold. Build a garage. Not a garage. A shed, which is coming along quickly. And I might recruit you guys to help me put up the roof.
Yeah.
Yep.
How big's a shed?
12 by 12.
Sounds like a reasonable size.
Big enough for a platform.
Yep.
There you go.
A platform and a workbench.
At my apartment, I rented out a garage, and I'm putting together a garage gym as well, so should be fun. As far as sports psychology goes, Becca Gurdon had recommended that I read the book Mind Gym. It is by Gary Mack. I was not familiar with much about sports psychology, but I found it pretty interesting, and I think it would be pretty helpful for a lot of people. So, James, you're an exercise science major, and so you've studied this stuff a fair amount.
Yeah, and Gary Mack is actually related to Freddie Mac. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Hi.
No, I'm just kidding. Freddie Mac is the comedian.
Okay.
Yeah, I took a sports psychology class in college, and I actually got a lot out of it. And it brings forward, I don't really know how to explain it. Things that you would already know, like common sense stuff, and it explains them to you. So it's kind of neat, especially when you go and you read sports psychology stuff, and you're like, oh, that's why you have an epiphany or something of something that you do in everyday life if you're an athlete.
Yeah, I think for a lot of athletes who excel in competition or in games, I think a lot of this stuff happens naturally without thinking about it, but there are some people who struggle in competition or struggle in the game type situation where if this stuff is brought to their attention, they can kind of focus on it.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. My sports psychology professor was actually the sports psychologist for the Paralympic sailing team for the United States, and so he would always give us stories and stuff from the Paralympic team, and that's what he would use as examples. And it's kind of interesting seeing the view from somebody that's in the Paralympics. People are all there for different reasons. Some people, sailing, you can sail when you get a little bit older, so you don't have to be a young buck all the time. Not like this sport, but so you get some older people, and then some people that kind of know that the end for them is coming near, like they're just going to be dead soon. And so he kind of I'm bringing this down dark. So
Thanks for that, James.
he would talk about the psychology of these people that knew that they were going to die, and they were like, I just want to go to the Olympics one more time, and kind of their journey. Well, all right, that's getting off topic.
Yeah.
But that's kind of neat.
Okay.
Glenn's over here
Can't stop
laughing.
laughing.
Yeah, This is the most Glenn has laughed in a year.
Well, that has to be one of the funniest comments ever.
I don't even know which one he thought was funny. But.
This is a pretty serious topic that Glenn Oh, man. If I'd have known that would have made Glenn laugh, I would have said that 3 months ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
It wasn't so much what he said, it was the way he said it.
Yeah.
They're going to be dead soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's funny. James does that once in a while where he says something really interesting in a profound way, and you're like, where did that come from? like the land of his house. But Anyways, I guess one of the first things that I thought was interesting is that you can't control what happens outside of what you're doing. So to only focus on what you're doing. So where this came from is kind of Major League Baseball pitchers. They, like one particular Major League Baseball pitcher, won 4 or 5 games in a row at the beginning of the season, and then he went on a losing streak. So he lost the decision on the next 3 games. So he won the first 5 games, lost the 3 consecutive games after that, and he was really worried about it. He's like, what's going on? And basically what happened is when he talked to this guy, Gary Mack, the sports psychologist, Gary Mack asked him a few questions. He said, well, what was your ERA in the first 5 games versus...
All right, for these non-baseball people, what's an ERA? I don't even know.
Earned run average.
Earned run average.
So basically how many runs you're giving up per inning. So he would ask them, well, what's your ERA? What's your walk to strikeout ratio? And come to find out, in the 3 games that he lost after the opening 5 that he had won, he had a lower ERA and a better walk to strikeout ratio. So he was actually performing better. But his teammates, on the other hand, had more errors. They weren't scoring as many runs, so he didn't get the decisions. So he was focused on just the result of the wins and losses instead of what he had control over. So I found that interesting because he was actually beating himself up, but he was improving.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I mean, of course, that same situation could be, I know not in the team sport, but reflected on the weightlifting as far as like attempts. Like, which attempt do you miss? Do you miss your first attempt every time? Look up your percentages and see where the issues are at, and then find out what you can do about it.
The thing that I can see that you could relate it to is like internal versus external locus of control. Like if you're competing, you can only focus on how much you can lift, as opposed to focusing on how much someone else is lifting. So if you are going into a competition and concerned, oh well, so and so just snatched 160 kilos, but I've only done 155 kilos, instead of focusing on your performance and focusing on an internal locus of control and what you're capable of, you're too concerned about what everybody else can do, but you can't control that. So you have to focus on what you're capable of and do your best, as opposed to focusing on what everybody else can do, everyone else around you is doing.
Absolutely. I mean, going into a competition, you know what you have hit and you know where you are at. So you have to understand you can only control what you do on that platform. Don't worry about what someone else is opening with. Don't worry about all that stuff. Just trust your coach who's at the table, who knows you, and let them make the calls. And all you should focus on is the task at hand. So go out there and make the attempts that your coach puts on the bar. And if you make lifts, good things happen. I think a lot of people focus on what other people are doing at the competition. Would you agree, Glenn?
I think so. Have any of you guys ever read The Inner Game of Tennis?
I have.
Which is a pretty famous sports psychology book. It's kind of older, and they focus a lot on people trying too hard, and getting themselves tied up in knots. And I think that's relevant to weightlifting because of attempts. A lot of times people are concentrating so hard on making 1 attempt, 2 attempts, 3 attempts, or a certain weight, especially a certain weight, that they basically tie themselves up in knots. And I think that there's a lot to be said for basically having a looser attitude. Adopting I'm going to try. It may happen, and some days it might not. But I'm going to do the best I can and leave it at that, instead of trying to control everything so hard.
Yeah, because you can only control what you do. You can only control what you do when you get on the platform. You can't make someone make an attempt or miss an attempt. You just have to be in your bubble and do your thing. And I think, I can certainly see meets that I've lost focus of that personally, and I compete better when I just get in the zone and only think about myself.
Yeah, I think there is a fine line though when it comes to that. At least personally for myself. I think that fine line is, you want to focus on yourself and what you're capable of, But when it comes to competition, if I know someone goes out there and does 160 kilos, I'm hell bent on winning. So 161, is more motivation for me after seeing them make a successful lift. I think, again, like I mentioned, that fine line, if you see them do a given weight, if that motivates you to better yourself and do more, then that's positive motivation and that's good. But if you watch someone make a lift and then you feel bad about it because, they just made this weight, and then you handle that pressure in a negative way, and it's bringing you down, then you have to kind of go into your own bubble, only do what you know you can do and handle it that way. Whereas if watching them, whoever that may be, your competition, if watching them do successful lifts or anything like that motivates you, then, use that to your advantage.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting. They would call that the zone of optimal performance. And for each individual, you would really have to figure out what your zone of optimal performance would be. So, for example, let's say you got a scale 1 through 10. 1 is being under low stress, and 10 being very excited and high stress. Somebody just snatched 160, and you're on your third attempt, and you got to snatch 161 to win. So you got to find out if you need to look at that guy snatching 160 and being like, all right, I'm gonna beat him. I'm gonna be, in a high stretch situation. I really got to go after it, and then you go out there and take the lift. Now, if you're somebody that's on like the lower end, if you're at like a 2 or something, and you need low stress, something you would do before you go out to that attempt is, of course, not watch the guy before, maybe not even know if he made it or not. Try to be, just focus on other things. Kind of go out there, do some deep breathing and calm yourself down, and then take your attempt. And then that's just two extremes of the situation, just like what you said. And then it's really about finding out how you perform best. So if you, like when in your training, it's the best time to do it. Or at a small local competition, try both. Maybe for snatches, try being real excited, get psyched up, get motivated from all sorts of external things, and see if you hit a PR, or if you do better, or if you do worse. And then on the opposite, just figure it out. And things might change too between snatch and clean and jerk. They do for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, brushing up on what you're saying as far as, the snatch versus the clean and jerk, the clean and jerk is just a much heavier lift, and there's a little bit less finesse with the movement, as opposed to the snatch. I know that if I get really psyched up and, try to attack a snatch, sometimes I found that at times I'm more likely to miss, just because I'm a little more chaotic, whereas with a clean and jerk, it's more of a power movement. So if I get more hyped up, more aggressive, I'm more likely to make it, even if my technique isn't quite as smooth, just because, it is more of a power movement than the snatch, in my opinion anyways.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because I'm actually the complete opposite.
Oh, really?
I don't think I'm the opposite for the same reasons, but for the snatch, I feel like I've had a very a pretty good rehearsed pattern and a good overhead position. So if the bar's off a little bit, I can still save it. So when I go out there for the snatch, I go all out. And my hands are wider, so I kind of yank the bar off the ground. The bar doesn't oscillate, but when I go to cleans, my hands are in closer, and then if I go out there with the same aggression and yank on the bar the same way, the bar will actually oscillate and pull me out of position, and then I'll be all over the place, and then I'll be tired by the time I stand up, and I'll never be able to make the jerk. Huh. So it's kind of weird, but I actually have to calm down and pick the bar up slowly off the floor for a clean and just kind of move through it smoothly.
Huh. That is interesting, because I'm totally the opposite. If I don't get psyched up for clean jerk, that weight feels heavy if I'm not really actively trying to rip that thing off the ground. So whereas a snatch, I feel if I take a little more gradual approach to it and speed it up throughout the movement, it's lighter and I don't have to get as hyped up about it. So that just goes to show that everybody is different, and so you need to find what works for you.
And obviously the snatch and clean and jerk are two different movements, so like they're saying, you might have to take two different approaches. I personally think I excel when I'm as revved up as possible, just because I'm a laid-back person naturally in both lifts. And that is something that they talked about that kind of leads into what James is saying, is that, everyone's different. So on that stimulation curve between 1 and 10, some people do better on the lower end of that. Some people do better on the higher end of that. So some of the questions that he brought up in the book is, think of a day when you hit PRs, when you had the day of your life, and how stimulated were you? How much caffeine did you drink? What was going through your mind? And a lot of that, like, those are probably things that a lot of people have never thought about. You know, a great day happens, and it was just a great day. They don't think about the reasons for it afterwards and what mindset they were going through at the time.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly why sports psychology, like in learning it, you know that you did well this day and that all these things happened, but you might have not realized that that's why. And just by learning a little bit about sports psychology, you can figure it out, and then you can recreate those situations and then to be more successful later.
One thing to add, I know we're talking about sports psychology here, but to take just a quick spin off onto the physiology, one thing with getting more amped up, if you're towards a 10, one thing that we've seen, if you're more amped up, it does tax your CNS a lot more. There's a lot more CNS activity, and if your CNS is more activated more frequently, you're more likely to be overtrained. So we're talking about sports psychology and competition. Mm-hmm. But if we're, we have to look at the physiology just a little bit, and if you pump up to a 10 every single day of training, you're at a much higher risk of being overtrained because that CNS is being so much more stimulated when you're hyped up. So if you drink 3 scoops of 1-MR before you come into the gym every single day, and you're going balls to the wall and screaming before each lift, you're at a much higher risk of overtraining because you're taxing that CNS much more. I just want to put that out there so you guys realize that we are talking about competition and maybe other heavy days in training. But if you try to attack every single workout that way, if you're training 5 to 9 times a week, you just need to be careful about that, is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I know there's some people that they say, max out every day, go as hard as you can. I can speak from personal experience seeing people that doesn't work, or it works for maybe 1% of the top 1% of athletes. So pretty much that's probably not you. And then exactly what Jared said is going to happen. That's all I've got to say about that.
Well, Glenn, you've talked about this a lot before, about how if someone can stay calm in training and still lift heavy weights, they're going to get more out of training.
Yeah, I think that's a big advantage because you can lift heavy more often if you can stay calm. And I think that's a quality that you can nurture that quality, so to speak. And by trying to lift 90%, 95%, whatever your maximum is, while in a very calm state of mind, and trying consistently to lift as much as you can in a calm state of mind, I think you can improve on that. And I think in the long run, that's going to make you a better lifter.
Yeah, and we're talking about, I like that Jared brought this up because, it is about the mind and the muscle. It all works together. So obviously your body and your mind are both extremely important parts.
Mm-hmm.
So we got Matty Ice MDUSA here. You have anything to say about that?
Yeah. So about a week ago, I started reading a book by a retired MMA fighter by the name of Ensign Inoue, and the book's name is "Live a Man, Die a Man, Become a Man." And so far in this book, with training and competition, he takes a very aggressive approach to it. Like, being a fighter, his mentality is, train like you're ready to die, because you go into a ring, you can get hurt. And it's kind of helped me in training with weightlifting a little bit, just because I can't be afraid to mess up a lift or mess up a weight. I have to go 100% mentally into the workout we're doing. So if we're going up to like 90%, I gotta be ready to go up to 90%. And if Don or Glenn says go more, then I gotta go more. But if the workout is, doubles or repeat singles at a certain weight, then it's, get ready to do some work. Don't be afraid to mess up and get the work done.
Yeah, don't fear loss. That's one of the biggest things that this book tries to relay to the reader. People who are constantly fearing loss instead of focusing on the tasks that they have to do have worse performances every time, no matter what their physical makeup really is.
People that don't fail never get better.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, and one thing that you talk about the underdogs and things like that. There are people who can't deal with being number one and being expected to be number one, because if they're expected to win, then everyone expects them to win, and the only thing they can focus on, not in all cases, but in some cases, all they're focused on is not losing because they're already expected to win. Whereas an underdog, nobody expects them to win, so all they're focusing on is winning, and if they lose, then they're not out anything as far as anyone else is concerned. But if they win, then that says it all. And I know that some people have a difficult time being number one and expecting to be number one by the masses just because they can't handle that pressure of fearing the loss and what everyone will think.
The masses. That's turning into USA weightlifting. 408 people signed up for nationals.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
That's a fair amount.
200 more than last year at the skating rink.
Oh, God. Good old Skate Town, USA.
I think the venue this year is going to be pretty cool, so I'm very excited.
Well, that's part of the reason I was surprised so many people signed up. So, I mean, it's
expensive.
It's expensive. Getting a hotel out there. I think the hotel, the meat hotel, was like over $200 a night.
Getting fancy.
Yeah, I know.
Better be nice. Yeah, one of the chapters is called Give Yourself Permission to Win. They found that a lot of people are scared to win because they don't want the expectation of having to win every single time, like Jared's saying, because all they're going to think about is fearing loss. So, the people who fear loss or go out there, so say you're opening at 160 and you're thinking, man, it would be really embarrassing if I miss this lift, you're not very likely to make the lift. But if you're just like, if you're out there in the zone thinking, I have to go out here and make this lift to win, then you're pretty likely to make it in comparison.
This is kind of a off spin again, but it just kind of reminded me about always expecting or trying to not lose, in that mentality. Something that I've just always kind of had in the back of my mind is, there's always somebody out there that's better than you. I mean, even if they don't come to the competition, there's somebody out there that is better than you. You're not the best. Even if you're expected to win every single one of them, I think that's important to remember that, like, you can't be the best. You never will be. There's always going to be somebody else out there that's better, but they might not be doing the same things as you, but as long as you do everything you can, I think that's a good mindset for someone who is trying to not lose. Just realize that there's somebody else better.
I think, the other thing, I think the same principle, just a little different way of looking at it, is again that internal locus of control. I think a lot of people get too focused on what other people think about them and their performance. So, if I'm for example, if I post on Instagram or Facebook and post that, snatching 170, clean jerking 200, whatever, everybody's like, oh, Jared did this, he should come in and win. And then I show up at the competition and, I feel that pressure on everyone to win. Then I feel like I'm afraid to lose. Whereas if I'm just focused on myself, have the task at hand, and really you're just concerned about yourself and not what everybody thinks about you. I know personally that's one thing that really helps me is just focusing on, myself and not getting concerned with, people who I don't even know what their opinion is of me and things like that, and letting that distract from, trying to do your best and winning, trying to really keep a level head and focusing on what you're going out there and doing what you need to do and not concerning yourself with what other people think or feel is really important.
I don't think I have this problem, but I don't think I'm the best. But if I ever had that problem, I think I would shave my beard and go into the competition and no one would know who I am.
Nice.
I don't think I've had a clean shaven face in weightlifting. since I've been doing it.
You had a handlebar one time. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I forgot about the handlebar. But I grew it right back into a beard.
So, kind of moving along, they found a lot of people that made it to the top of their sport when they were younger, and they came up with the goals that they wanted to reach, that they would dream vividly about what they really wanted. So I guess visualization type things like James has talked about a few times before. It's kind of interesting because when I was younger, I remember watching like the 2008 Olympics. I remember watching like Kendrick and Chad Vaughn lift, and you know, it was in Beijing, so the time change was different. You had to stay up till like 3 a.m. to watch them lift and that kind of thing. And I remember like imagining myself there when Kendrick was lifting, and like literally like as he was making lifts, I would like get emotional because I was imagining myself being there, and I could feel, it was weird, like to the point where I could feel emotion. And
yeah, that's kind of neat. Well, another side topic with that is I was actually talking to Morgan King, and I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this with everyone, but she was talking about her visualization and how when she visualizes herself doing a lift, she visualizes all the things that she does wrong instead of the things that she does right. So what she actually started doing is she visualized herself being, what's the 48-kilo girl that's got the American record in snatch?
Tara
Knotts. She visualized herself being Tara Knotts and making the American record snatches or whatever weights that she was doing. And then she would visualize it perfectly. Because I guess they both kind of lift very similar, and same weight class, of course. And I mean, that's how she kind of tricked herself into visualizing successful lifts. And that really is the most important, is when you visualize success. And when you're doing your visualizations, just like Travis said too, is you're going to get a lot of those same emotions if you're doing it right, that you would be getting when you go out there in the platform. A lot of times I'll visualize my whole warm-up routines and everything. Even before we start warming up, I'll kind of go off to the side, sit down, and just visualize myself going through the whole warm-up, going out there for the first attempt. I kind of try to visualize everything, like the sounds that are going to be happening, bars hitting the ground in the background while I'm about to go out and lift, the smell, the dryness of the chalk on the hands, how the knurling digs into your hands. I put my right hand on the bar first and then kind of reach down, grab the bar with my left hand, shake my arms out, and then sometimes I'll scream or something and then go down and do the lift. And then I would just visualize myself doing it successfully and then seeing 3 white lights and then hearing the buzzer for the down signal and everything. And then I would just go through that, and I'd imagine exactly how the plates are going to be on the bar for certain weights, although you don't know exactly what weights you're going to be going to sometimes. It's just kind of something around there. And then you start getting, your heart starts beating faster, you start getting excited, so you kind of get a preview of what it's going to be like before you go out there. So in a way, you've just done a whole training practice session in your head. And I think that's valuable, especially if you visualize yourself doing everything successful. And sometimes you do get stuck in that thing where you visualize and then you visualize a loss and you just can't help it. It's like you just got to stop it and then redo it and then just keep doing it over and over until you can visualize yourself doing it successfully. I don't know, you can even put it in slow motion in your mind. So there's all sorts of fun things you can do. I kind of got on a rant there. But those are all things that I do before I go out there and I compete.
Well, I mean, the main takeaway from that is you had all the details worked out, smells, feeling. And they said the more vividly that you see these things, the more real they become, the more likely that you'll do it. And I remember, in the past I've said I didn't really do visualization, but then as I was reading the book, I realized that I always have, because when I was watching like the 2008 Olympic trials, I remember like Casey Bergener going out and we thought we had 3 spots at the time, so he was taking 224. And I remember as he was walking out onto the stage, I would like imagine myself coming out on the stage, like my heart would be pumping fast and like when I think about that moment, I myself get emotional because I can imagine myself being in that position. Like literally, like in, I don't know, not really tears, but like literally like feeling what that would feel like and imagining how good it would feel to be in that position, thinking that you just made the Olympic team. You know what I mean? And so the more vividly that you can dream those things, the more likely they are to happen. And they shared a lot of pretty cool stories in this book. But,
yeah, another thing with visualization, they did a study with, I think it was hockey players, and when they were injured and they were in the sports medicine place and trying to recover, like to say they had a sprained ankle or something, and they'd be sitting there doing their recovery work, calf extensions and all that stuff, riding the elliptical. And then they would have them watch hockey as they were doing the rehab stuff. And then they had a group that wasn't watching hockey as they did the rehab stuff. And they found that the people that were watching the hockey actually recovered faster because they actually, in a way, by watching it, were visualizing it. And a lot of those same muscles and those neuro pathways were firing, which kind of helped in the recovery and sped it up a little bit, and they got out there in the game sooner.
Yeah, and I have a really interesting story, and I'll make this quick if we're ready to move on to the next part of the topic. But
go ahead.
Real interesting story about Dragomir, who was an Olympic medalist back. Travis, you know what year? Back in the early '90s, late '80s.
I think 80, not 80, maybe 84.
Yeah. He was the Romanian, and he was the coach at the OTC in the early 2000s.
And a story, and I can't remember who exactly heard this from. It may have been Zygmunt at the Olympic Training Center, but anyways, came from a reliable source. But Dragomir, before the Olympics, back one of the years he medaled, he had to have back surgery. And what they did was every workout that they were supposed to do, he had written on paper. And when he was laying, in the bed recovering, he would go through every single set. He would look at the workout, close his eyes, and he would go and do each warm up for all of his workouts. And what ended up happening is he did this for weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I'm not exactly sure, but he did this for weeks on end, even months. And then with hardly any training, went to the Olympics and still won. It was either a silver or a bronze medal. A bronze. And all he did was that mental training. I mean, that speaks miles about the psychology of sports and how much you can benefit from that. I mean, he wasn't even training and still pulled off a bronze medal after back surgery just from mental training.
Yeah. I mean, you're rehearsing all those motor patterns in your mind too, keeping them fresh. So
yeah, and there's even studies that show that when you envision doing those reps, that your brain sends impulses through the body as if you were actually doing it. So you keep those neural pathways firing and active, and you don't lose it. It's incredible.
It's crazy shit.
Yeah. Yeah, so interesting stuff for sure. I definitely, I wasn't a huge believer in sports psychology, but like I said, as I'm reading this book, I'm like, wow, this is pretty powerful, and, I'm going to look more into it. And kind of the last thing that this looks at is that a lot of people dream big and they get motivated, but how do you keep going? So a lot of people decide, hey, I want to start weightlifting and make it to the Olympics, and then they don't keep going through the tough times. And the two biggest things. So one of the quotes was, motivation gets you going, discipline keeps you going. So you have to be disciplined and diligent about doing the work. And then it says you have to enjoy the journey of it. You have to, so for weightlifting, you have to enjoy training. So you have to be on a program that you enjoy doing. And that's really important. And I know Glenn's a huge believer in that, and that's why he kind of came up with the program that he stuck with for years. Is just because the lifters that you were coaching enjoyed what was happening.
Well, yeah, it's something that seemed to kind of fit with their psychology. I mean, I think that's one of the most important things is that, over time and years, literally, I think that one of the most important features of the training program that I like is that it seemed to fit with a lot of the lifters. And who knows if I had coached a different group of lifters, way back when, might have come up with a very different program, but it just seemed to be a program that like people enjoyed doing. And so that, I think, is very underestimated part of it. If you have something that you're going to go in and have a positive attitude about every single day versus something else that you're going to not think positively about, I think that has a huge effect on results.
I absolutely 100% agree with that. If you go into the gym with a negative attitude, like, oh, I don't want to be here, this sucks, I hate this workout, it's not going to go good, versus coming in like, oh, sweet, like, I get to snatch today, this is on the workout, and you're excited about it, and you're motivated to go and do well. I mean, having and keeping a positive mindset through training is totally underestimated and is crucial.
Yeah. That ties in, I think, with something that Lynn Jones said. Lon Kilgore actually relayed to me, said, the most important part of a program is that people want to do it. If you don't want to do it, it's not going to be a good program. In fact, the best program or the worst program in the world is better than the best program if athletes don't believe in it. So if you're having a program that is physiologically sound, the most positive thing in the world, but nobody believes in it, then that's not going to be as good as the worst program in the world that everyone believes in. It took me a minute to get that out, but
yeah, I was actually talking to James a little bit the other day about, you said you used to kind of like nerd out on programming, sets and reps, and be really into what was going on behind the scenes. But, as you become a weightlifter training full time, you're just like, you want to come in here and have fun and just do stuff that keeps you interested. And I mean, obviously if you quit, you're not going to get better. So.
Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot of the general principles of programming, and which are good to stick to. But then I would get so in depth with it, and try to follow everything exactly. And I never really got that strong. And really, it's just once I started, once I came here, well, I'll just use my squat as an example. My squat never went up, and then finally when I came here and I just kind of sat back, didn't look into it as in depth, and just kind of came in and did the work, and enjoyed what I was doing, enjoyed the group of people that I was training with. I had that motivation of other people pushing you, and then everything got stronger, and I didn't follow all the exact rules that all the principles said, but I still got stronger. So there's a lot of truth to just having the right situation for a program to work.
Yeah, and definitely at the time that you came onto the team, and we still have tons of competition between all the lifters, at least once a week, once every couple weeks, we'll have something fun to do. And I was talking to Jared about this, just coming in and competing. I mean, it makes it so much fun, and it brings out the best in a lot of people. I mean, just today, Tom's really been struggling lately in training. And Jared just moved out here, and he's like, hey, Tom, you want to come and train with me today? So Jared and Tom are jerking off the blocks, something that Jared can do kind of fully because it doesn't hurt his back as much. And you jerked, what, 200?
Yeah, yeah.
And then it pushed Tom to make 201 because he's like, I don't want to get beat by 94. But Tom has really been struggling to jerk 180 lately. So, I mean, just that fun part of training. Just a little bit of shit talking, not in a mean way, but like, hey, you gonna let a 94 beat you? Tom smokes 201, and that was huge.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I was here to see that. I kind of left early.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point of the Olympic Training Center in the beginning, or any training facility, is to stimulate competition. I mean, the program in and of itself, needs to be sound, but that's secondary, really. If you have a group of people in here that are all pushing each other and kicking ass, and they're going to grow with each other and thrive off each other, that in and of itself is more important than any program, just because if you're competing on a daily basis and you're hellbound on winning, you're going to improve regardless of what program you're on.
But as you said, you got to be careful not to overstimulate yourself.
Absolutely.
But it's important on those heavy days to stimulate yourself. Don't get stuck in a rut, and I mean, we write the workout on the board, and it usually says X percentage, but if people are feeling good and they're thriving on that competition, there's always a green light to push each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just know your boundaries. Walk that fine line between, training at your potential versus overreaching. And, you got to make sure that you stay on that fine line and don't cross it, because overtraining is certainly worse than undertraining. And being in the game for a long time, certainly helps out with that. You know your body, you know how you feel when, you start pushing a little too much. Being sore is one thing, but, being totally all beat to hell is another. So just know your boundaries and your limits and keep it within reason.
Yeah, and it's a good reason to have a coach. I mean, even if it's an online coach, somebody that can recognize those signs of when you're going too hard or when something's wrong is happening, where they can tell you, okay, that's enough, slow it down.
Mm-hmm.
But then a coach, again, that will still give you the green light on those days that you want to go crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get to training, I guess. So the book is called Mind Gym by Gary Mack. And Glenn, you said there's a couple more books that...
The Inner Game of Tennis is one that I like, and it's an older book. I don't remember when it was written, but I think it was written in the 70s.
Yeah, so I'll definitely be checking that one out because, like I said, I mean, this was recommended to me by Becca, and I've never really been into sports psychology, but it kind of opened up my eyes that the mind is very powerful, and it could be something that I personally could train a little more. So, anyways, we'll see you guys next week. I think a couple of us are going out of town this weekend, so this will probably be the only podcast.